Hello. This is a Mimic AI integration demo for iOS developers. In this video, we'll showcase the Mimic AI workflow powered by Mimic's core product, MimOE. MimOE is a cloud-native operating environment for endpoint devices that includes a generative AI runtime and support for hosting lightweight services on user devices, providing a RESTful API to the application environment. We will demonstrate how MimOE functions as an API gateway and a runtime environment for edge microservices. It allows them to be discoverable without dependency on the cloud and facilitates seamless communication between devices within a network mesh. We'll also show how a compatible generative AI model can be integrated into mobile apps with just a few simple steps. This integration demo is designed to help developers incorporate various components into their applications using the Mimic client library. Additionally, we'll highlight some key benefits of Mimic's MimOE and AI solution, including offline first capability, enhanced security and data privacy, on-device APIs, and support for large language models. Before we begin, there is one hardware requirement and a couple of recommended tutorials to mention. Firstly, because the MimOE binary is specifically compiled for hardware devices, a real iOS device is required to run this demo code. iOS simulators won't work. Secondly, to enhance your learning experience, we recommend reading tutorials on the Mimic Dev Docs website, either before or after watching this demo. One covers the Mimic client library integration, while the other explains MimOE runtime management in an iOS environment. We won't cover these two topics in this demo, so please refer to those tutorials for more details. Instead, we'll focus on integrating and interacting with Mimic AI components in Xcode. This will include deploying a Mimic AI use case from a hosted JSON configuration file, setting up the configuration for the AI language model download, and ensuring the user has enough space on their device for it. We'll go through downloading the AI language model to the user's device, referencing it, asking it questions, and processing its response stream. Finally, we'll show how to combine the integration and download steps to streamline the process even further. To conclude, we'll discuss the benefits of an offline-first approach where applications can communicate with AI language models even without internet connectivity. After the coding examples, we'll suggest more tutorials and ideas for additional online content to enhance your learning experience. Let's get started. So, how do we integrate Mimic AI into an iOS application? As mentioned, we won't cover the integration of the Mimic client library or MimOE runtime management since these are addressed in existing tutorials on the Mimic DevDocs website. Our starting point will be an Xcode project where the Mimic client library has already been integrated using CocoaPods, including the Edge core and MimOE runtime components. We already have code here to start the MimOE runtime and authenticate the developer using their developer ID token. In the end, this code will return a MimOE access token required for the integration calls. Our main view, called Content View, includes a simple body with text and a button. It also has a task attached that activates the MimOE runtime and authenticates when the view appears for the first time. We also have a reference to the Mimic client library in the form of a MimOE client object, which we'll use to make our calls to the library. Now, let's get into the actual integration of the Mimic AI use case. In an empty extension of Content View, we'll copy and paste function code that uses the Mimic client library object we previously set up. We'll call the integrate AI method, passing our MimOE access token, API key, and the URL to the configuration file for the Mimic AI use case. We won't pass the language model object at this point, as we'll show the model downloading separately. Therefore, we'll have no code in the download handler for now, but we'll keep a reference to the integration request in the request handler. Then, we have a completion handler where we validate the integration result. Let's compile our code, expecting a few errors as we haven't filled in all the required information. Missing elements include the API key, config URL, and active stream constants. Let's set these up in the main view. The active stream captures the reference to the integration call. The API key secures communications between Mimic AI and our application, and the config URL points to the use case configuration file. After setting these up, we can compile successfully. Let's test our new function in the main view. We use the Start button here and an execution handler. Let's copy our code here, which will call our new integrate AI method, passing the mimoe access token validating the result and printing a message, either a success or failure. After compiling and pressing the Start Here button, we see a console log message confirming the integration success and listing the deployed MILM Edge microservice. Now that we have the Mimic AI use case integrated into the iOS project, we want to initialize the download of an AI language model to the user's device so that we can start interacting with it using any components. First, we need to set up a configuration object that tells Mimic AI where to download the model from. We'll copy this configuration information and place it in Content View as an object. Here, we create a model request specifying the relevant details for the language model, such as the ID gem of 1.12b, URL, and expected download size in bytes. This is important since it helps the Mimic client library verify storage availability on the user's device before starting the download. Because these are big files, in this case 1.8 gigabytes, we want to make sure to check that ahead of time. Next, we'll add code to download the language model to the user's device. Returning to our Content View extension, we will copy the download AI function code. We will again use the object reference to the Mimic client library and specifically call on its download AI method, where we will pass the configuration in for the model, the mimoe access token, the mimoe API key, and the reference to the deployed Mimic use case from the previous step. This time around, we will have some code in the download handler to check the progress of the download and print out some useful information. In the request handler, we will once again capture reference to the download request itself in the completion handler. We will verify the result and then print out useful information, such as an error, if it should occur. In case of success, we will return a reference to the downloaded AI language model so that we can use it later to interact with it. With that code in place, we must amend our main content view to call on the new function we just added. First, let's rename our initial button to integrate AI for better clarity. Next, we'll add a second button labeled Download AI Model, which will call our new method, supplying it with the model configuration and a reference to the deployed use case. After validation, if successful, it will print out information about the downloaded AI language model. Since we need a reference to the deployed use case, we'll capture additional information from our previous steps. We'll add a new state variable, deployed use case, and capture the value returned from our integrate AI function during the integration step. Now that we have this second button, we can compile the code and see if it works. Now, we have two buttons, Integrate AI and Download AI Model. Let's press Integrate AI first, and we'll see information about the deployed MILM microservice printed out. Then, we'll press Download AI Model to start the actual download. When we press the Download AI Model button, we see that the function downloads the language model. Since it's a 1.8 gigabyte file, this might take some time to complete, depending on your internet connection speed. Just be patient. Progress information will be printed out as the download proceeds. Once the download completes, the completion handler will perform validation. You'll see the downloaded model information printed in the console log, ensuring that the language model is in a ready-to-use state so we can start asking it questions. To ask questions, we'll need a reference to the model. In our previous step where we downloaded the AI model to our user device, we obtained a reference to the model from the download AI method. However, for the purposes of this demo, we'll show you how to get the reference with a separate call. Let's go back to our Content View extension and add two new methods. The first method focuses on obtaining a reference to the language model download. For this, we leverage mimoe client or the Mimic client library and specifically call its AI model method. This method requires the ID of the AI model we want to reference. We already know the model ID from a previous call. As shown here, the ID is LM Studio Community Gemma 112b. We will use this same value in our request, along with our mimoe access token, API key, and reference to the deployed use case. As before, we perform some validation. If all checks pass successfully, the method returns a reference to the downloaded model encapsulated in the success response. The second function, called Ask AI, is where we actually ask the AI model a question. We call the Ask AI method on our client library, supplying the model ID we retrieved, along with our mimik access token, API key, our question and reference to the deployed use case. The stream handler will capture the response stream from the AI model. For now, we'll just print it to the console log. In the request handler, as before, we capture a reference to the AI chat request, which allows us to examine it later or cancel it before the stream ends. After the AI model responds to our question, the completion handler finalizes the request. How this works is the model streams a series of lines as a response, and this method doesn't return until the response concludes. While responses are streaming, we remain in the stream handler, and once the response concludes, we move to the completion handler. To start taking advantage of these two new methods, let's go back to our main content view and add a third button. Let's copy the code and we'll call this button Ask AI Model a Question. This button, labeled Ask AI Model a Question, will perform two tasks. First, it calls our new method to get the downloaded AI model reference, and then it proceeds to call the Ask AI method to ask our question. After, we supply the model ID we found previously and the usual parameters such as before access token, API key, and deployed use case reference. If everything goes well, we get the reference to the download AI model back. We print out the ID of the model console log, and then we move on to the second step, which is calling on the Ask AI method where we will ask our question. List healthy food options, supply the model ID that we got earlier, and the usual mimik access token, API key, and deployed use case. As I mentioned previously, this call will only conclude once the AI model stops in response to our question. Let's compile the application and see if this works. You should see three buttons now. Let's click Integrate AI first, then Download AI Model. This is very fast because we already have the model downloaded. Finally, ask the AI model a question. As you can see, the model initialized with some information printed in the console log. We see the response is being streamed from the model. This is where we print out the information in the console log. Ideally, we would like to do a more in-depth analysis of the incoming response stream so we can present it better to the user. To do more detailed processing of the stream response from the AI model, we will add a new method in the content view extension. Let's add the code here. It's called process response, where we'll send it to the stream coming from the AI language model. Then we will get the type and then send messages to the user's UI according to the type. If it's the main content, we send such a message. If it's messages about the model being loaded or ready, you can send a different message. When the stream concludes, we also have that available here. So we can inform the user. We need to go back to where we asked our question and have a stream handler. We were previously just printing the result to the console log. So now we're going to use our new method, which is to send the result here. And now we go to our content view again to the main view. We will add a new state variable to hold the response text that we want to show the user in the UI. Now, underneath the three buttons, we will add our text, which will show the response text in the Ask AI and then process response functions. Let's go to the steps. Integrate AI, download model. After I press the Ask AI Model button, we start seeing messages, model ready, and now the stream is coming through to the UI. You can also see it in the console, which is being printed out. Once the stream response concludes, we will end up in this part of the code, and the response stream completed will be shown in the UI to the user. Next, we will show you how to streamline the mimik AI integration and language model downloading process even further, because it is technically possible to do both the integration and model downloading with just one call. In the previous Integrate AI function, We did not specify the language model to download because we intentionally wanted to show it as a separate function in the download AI method here, but it is technically possible to do both integrating and downloading in one go. So, this is what this new function does. We pass the model to the download as a parameter, then fill it in for the mimic client library integrate AI method call as well. We are reusing our download handler code that will print out some useful information, and the rest is the same as the previous integrate AI call with the additional downloading call code as well. With this, we'll return to our main content view and make a small UI change. Specifically, we'll replace the separate integrate AI and download AI model buttons with a single button. We will copy the code here. This button, labeled Integrate and Download AI, will call our new Integrate and Download AI function, where we will specify the usual mimoe access token and the AI language model to download. Let's compile and run the application. As you can see, we now only have one button that combines both integrating and downloading. After pressing the button, you can see that the language model download begins, and after a little bit of time, the integrate and download AI function is here. After validation in the completion handler, we will return the reference to the deployed use case. This is the same as in the integrate AI function, with the difference that the language model has been downloaded as part of the integration code at the same time. Here is the model download progress. Successful, then we see the use case reference object with the deployed MILM Edge microservice. So it worked both integrating and downloading in one call. One additional very interesting aspect of Mimic AI technology is that it works in offline mode as well, where the device does not have internet connectivity. Obviously, you must download the AI language model first using a network connection. But after that, you can put the device in airplane mode, for example, like we did with our test device. We recorded the screen, so we can demonstrate how the offline mode works, which we couldn't do it live here, connected to the computer because we had no wireless connection to the device. So we had to do it separately, directly on the device. We'll just play the recording back here. Let's see. We'll go to turn on the airplane mode, which turns off all network connectivity. And then we tap on the Ask AI model, a question button. As you can see, we are getting the expected stream of responses from the AI language model. To conclude, additional interesting articles are currently available on the developer.mimik.com website. We recommend you go there. Check out our quick start guide, where you can find more information about example applications. Integrating the Mimic client library, working with mimoe, and working with Edge microservices, and also tutorials. What we just covered in this demo, working with AI language models. Thank you for your interest in Mimic AI technologies. If you have questions, please contact us through our website at mimik.com. Happy coding!